Hello, this is Recovery Diaries in Depth. I'm your host, Gabe Nathan. Thanks so much for joining us. We're very happy to have you here. We are so happy and lucky to have as our guest for today, Nick Emeigh. He is the executive director of NAMI Bucks County. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. He has survived several suicide attempts and struggles with mental health challenges and addiction. He is NAMI-Man, a mental health superhero who flies all around Bucks County and beyond, including in a documentary film that we made about Nick several years ago. And we are just so proud of the work that he does and of my personal friendship with him. So glad he's here today. Each week, we'll bring you a Recovery Diaries contributor, folks who have shared their mental health journey with us through essay or video format. We want to see where they are on their mental health journey since initially being published on our website. Our goal is to continue supporting our diverse community by having conversations here on our podcast to follow up and see what has shifted, what has changed, and what new things have emerged. We're so happy to have you along for this journey. We want to remind you to follow our show for new and back episodes at recoverydiaries.org. There, like the podcast, you'll find stories of mental health, empowerment, and change. You can also sign up for our mailing list there so you never miss a new podcast episode, essay, or film. And you can find this podcast pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. We appreciate your comments and feedback about our show. It helps us improve, make changes, and grow. And of course, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Nick Emeigh, thank you so much for joining me today on Recovery Diaries in Depth. I love you, and I love to see your face. Even though our listeners can't see your face, it sucks. But I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, Gabe, thanks for having me. I love you too. And this is the culmination of many years of advocacy and friendship. And this is wonderful. Thank you.
As you know, I don't prepare for this podcast or anything else, but we had a very brief interaction this morning because I had to delay the recording of this for an hour. And you were very lovely about it. And Pete, our audio engineer, was very lovely about it too. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned where you were this morning. And yeah. I think that's where I want to start our conversation. Where were you this morning? What were you doing? And why were you there? And I think you letting us in on this is going to give our listeners a really lovely window into who Nick Emeigh is and the kind of things that he's involved in that maybe people might not think about.
Yeah. Well, I'll be a little more general about it because it touches on something sensitive, and I'll let everybody listening know. We'll be talking about mental health and suicide. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise if you're listening.
Right.
But we did have unfortunately, a young person die by suicide at a local school, and oftentimes we have school districts and admins who want to just brush that under the rug. They think that if they talk about it or celebrate a life that we've lost or, just keep someone's memory alive and honor the memory, that will cause other people to think about and plan for their own suicides. And, we know from research that isn't what happens. And so, if you don't talk about it and you don't, make it known that, suicide is way more common than everybody thinks, then we do a disservice to the whole school. So what we've been doing over the past couple of weeks is supporting not just the students in the loss of their friend and, their peer. We're supporting the staff and we're supporting the families as well. And so this morning we just did a little special something to remember this young man. And, it's something that the students wanted to engage NAMI in as well. So several things that we'll be doing: a breakfast. We'll be be joining them next week for an awareness day for Mental Health Awareness Month, and having the kids make friendship bracelets. And NAMI Bucks is known for the positive Post-its, so we're taking those into the school, and we're going to have kids do a take one, leave one of the positive Post-its. But this morning's breakfast was particularly special to remember this young man, and to honor what his favorite things were. And, we had some tears and we had some joyful moments. But what's really important that comes out of, and we'll talk more about NAMI and the programs and everything like that, but what's really special that comes from any interaction that we have with schools and with the students is that they open up to us because we're so real and accessible. And, we have kids coming up to us and asking, what can I do to help a friend? I have a friend who's struggling. I don't know exactly what to do or say. And, we get to help facilitate those conversations and that support that people need and are lacking, that schools are often afraid to provide, to be honest with you. And so it's really been an honor to be able to go into this school and to educate the kids, to help them to honor and remember their friend who died by suicide, and actually be able to say the word and to talk about it. Suicide is not a bad word. Like on a lot of social media platforms and on YouTube, you can't say that. You have to say unalive or, whatever.
I know.
And it's obnoxious. And I shouldn't say that. If
Why
I'm
not?
on,
You just did, and we're not going to edit it out. So you said it. It's not. I'll go further. It's obnoxious and it's bullshit, and it is further stigmatizing and further shoving this thing under the rug, and it's making advocacy incredibly hard. As you know, I've been doing suicide advocacy for a long time, and I refuse to write unalived.
No,
I refuse to write
I don't either.
SU exclamation point.
I know.
Fuck that, because I cannot participate in that. I
Yeah.
cannot participate in the obscenification of a simple factual word, a cause of death, a means of death that we are trying to prevent. And you can't prevent something that you can't talk about.
Exactly. 100%. And, if we go in to schools and to, other community programs and things, and one of the biggest education pieces around suicide is that you have to talk about it and you have to say the word. And, if we can't do that, and if we're telling people that, we don't say commit suicide. We say die by suicide. Suicide is not a crime or a sin. But if we're talking about it on social media as though it is, who's right and who's wrong?
Right. We're reinforcing that.
Yeah. We go by research, and, data is important. And, research and data shows us that, language matters, and the way that we talk about it matters. So, if we're saying one thing on social media and then we're saying another in our education programs, then, that's confusing. And kids and young adults and adults are going to go with, what the status quo is. And it appears as though the status quo is SU asterisk pound sign.
Well, people are bowing down to it because they're like, well, so, and this is, I want to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
How do you square the hypocrisy behind doing that, behind, okay, well, this is what social media is telling me I have to do, with the need to get the message out, to say, okay, if I don't do that, then I'm going to get shadow banned and nobody's going to see very important prevention and education materials. If I use the full word, or if I don't do it, then I'm participating in that stigma. So what's an advocate to do? As my great grandmother used to say, what's going to be? So what do you do? How do you you, Nick Emeigh, and you organizationally, NAMI Bucks, deal with that?
I mean, talking about it, we have to let people know that this is what's going on. And I do it anyway. I do it anyway. There are no, you know me, I'm an open book. There are no holds barred on my story, on my lived experience, on, talking about mental health and suicide. And I just keep going and I steamroll right through it. We have a big following on social media, and fortunately, I haven't experienced the shadow ban and everything. But what I'm doing is participating in advocacy with these social media companies, with Google, who controls YouTube. And, it may not be me directly, but I contribute to the advocacy that goes into stopping that from happening. So, I'm fortunate to be part of a national organization that advocates against those things. And so what I would invite everybody to do is, we work with Mental Health America, with American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the JED Foundation, which they just kind of merged. But we work with them to let companies and the CEOs and the powers that be at Google and, Meta and everything know that is harmful and it does a disservice. Now, whether or not they listen and do anything about it is a different story. But with any form of advocacy that we've ever done, it's about pounding it into their heads until they get it. And oftentimes, even with, you can compare this to the school setting, people aren't willing to.
It's very comparable. It's exactly what I was thinking.
Yep. Yeah. People don't like to take action on difficult or challenging, and you can't see my air quotes, but situations.
I can hear them.
Until something happens to them.
Yeah.
And so, what we're good at is making a personal connection to, whomever we're speaking with and, whatever company we need, change within. And, connecting on that personal level, saying, everybody knows someone. I mean, there's no family that is free of mental health conditions and, a touch of suicide. And so, if you would not want this for your own kids, if you would not want this for your own family, then why are we promoting it across a massive platform? It's doing a real disservice. And, they're always afraid of liability and getting sued.
And they're listening to the lawyers and the risk managers and shitting their pants while they're doing it, right? So it's an uphill battle. You're really going head to head against fear.
Yes, absolutely. And so, what we try to promote is, you can be afraid and do things anyway. And, you can, and you can't. If you're chasing the dollar and appeasing shareholders and appeasing the risk management team in your organization, and you're literally doing a disservice to the people that we are trying to help, and within your family you've experienced mental illness and mental health conditions and suicide, you're part of the problem. And, what I would love to do, and what, CEOs and legislators and everything, what they love is a picture and a handshake that they're doing something good that they can post on social media or put in the newspaper or whatever. So, we kind of do that sort of a thing. But, what we encourage is we don't want you in the newspaper for the wrong reasons. I mean, and by newspaper, I mean email now. Right. Because,
or social media. Yeah.
Or social media. But rather, we'd love to have you and promote that you are doing the right thing. And so do the right thing, and then we will uplift you and, celebrate that. But, to date, it's been really challenging to move the needle with that language and having to censor and things like that. So in the meantime, I am doing it anyway. And,
Yeah.
it's been pretty successful. And I think one thing about me and, this affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness that I run in Bucks County is that everyone knows I'm real. I'm the same way all the time, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm up on a panel, if I'm, like whatever I'm doing, I am the same. And that just being consistent like that kind of does move the needle, maybe a little slower than it would in any other way. But, I'm just the same all the time. And, I think people know what to expect from me. Our account doesn't get reported and, on Instagram and everything like that. But, I think that being an example like you, Gabe, with your social media accounts and not censoring the word, not censoring yourself, actually speaking candidly about, suicide and mental health, I think will set this a standard. And we have to show them that, hey, nothing's happening to us. We're not getting sued for talking about suicide and things like that. And so being an example is another great thing that you're already doing, I'm already doing, and NAMI's already doing. But yeah.
But it's still hard.
It is.
But you
it's
mentioned
so hard and it's annoying.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit ago, you used the phrase, my life is an open book.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get into that book a little bit, if you don't mind. And I want to do this with respect and deference to a very real fact about you that I've known for a very long time, which is that you tell your story a lot as a function of necessity because of the work that you do, because of the organization that you represent, because you understand that that's like we do at Recovery Diaries. I mean, all we do is tell stories, tell our stories, tell other people's stories. You understand how important and impactful and moving that is. And talking about moving the needle, that's a huge part of the way that we do it. Mm-hmm. So, but I do want to ask you to share a little bit of your story with our listeners, but I do want to do it in a way that acknowledges how hard that is to do. And that I don't feel good about asking you to do it because you do it so much. And there's just something about what I'm feeling asking you to do that. That's, I feel like, I don't like that I'm asking you to do that. And I wonder, is there a toll on you from doing this so much, and that like doing it in a way that it has there's a rhythm to how you do it, I'm sure. And I know this because I tell my story, air quotes, and I fall into a way of doing it that is sometimes it maybe doesn't feel authentic or organic, or I'm editing parts out to protect myself or others, or telling it changing certain things based on where I am or who I'm talking to. This is a very long-winded introduction to this question, but I don't know. I don't even know where that leaves me. But I do just want to acknowledge that it's a hard thing to do and a hard thing to ask of you. And I'll just plop that pile of shit in your lap and see how you respond to it.
I'll tell you this. It takes a toll on me to tell my story in situations and settings where I know that I am not held in such esteem as I am here and with you. Or if I am in a room of people who I know don't respect the lived experience portion of the mental health journey, like sharing that lived experience. And, I have to do it anyway. It's speaking to some corporations and everything like that can be challenging because you go into a room and you don't know who all is in there, and you know that there are some attitudes in there that, oh, that not in my family, not in my backyard. I don't, I've never heard of mental illness, and I all this stuff. We hear everything, so that's challenging. Helping other people with as much empathy as I have can be a bit draining. But I will tell you that telling my story in a space like this, where I know that you and, your listeners value what I have to say and my lived experience and the journey, it actually isn't draining at all. It's the opposite. It fills my cup. And it's an honor to do it. And I think that it saves lives. And so I'm always happy to tell my story. And in safe settings like this, it actually allows me to. At first, I was ashamed of everything I'll tell you today. I was totally ashamed of it. And so at first, when I first got started, it was a little draining. But it allows me to take my story back and to own it and to be less ashamed of it. So, thank you for your regard for my feelings and my capacity and everything like that. But, Gabe, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. I am so busy right now. And I'm doing this with you because this fills my cup. So, yes, it can be difficult. It can also, and I should share this as well. I live with schizoaffective disorder and some other diagnoses. I take mental health medication. At 3:00 today, I have therapy, and that helps my sharing my story be less draining and less intense, and because I process it every Friday in therapy. So, you can't, I shouldn't say you can't, because you can. If you're a mental health advocate and you're not in therapy and you're not taking care of yourself and you're going out and you're sharing your story, multiple times a week and, helping other people and just emptying your cup. I hate to use trite expressions or whatever, but filling your cup is kind of a good way to illustrate that. And you're just pouring and pouring and pouring from your cup, and you're not doing anything to help yourself. I mean, I learned the hard way that will burn you out and drain you. But, if you're taking
and potentially
care
be damaging, very damaging.
Yes. I mean, I've had stretches where we are so busy and I'm just go, 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 go. And I say, I can skip therapy. I'll just do it next week. And then it becomes next week and next week. I learned the hard way that will burn you out. So, take care of yourselves. You deserve it. And, I have a complex a bit. I've been through lots of things in my life, and I feel that I'm alive today and kind of on, I don't want to say borrowed time, but, reclaimed time that I didn't expect to have. And so this time is not really mine, and I should be giving it to other people constantly. And, that's not healthy, and I didn't feel like I deserved self-care and help and therapy and all that stuff, but I do. And if you're listening and you're wondering if you should just be a full servant to everyone with mental health conditions and survivors of suicide, no, that's not all there is to you, and that's not all there is to me. So please, fill your cups. Go to therapy if you're able to. It's not accessible for everyone, and we should maybe talk about that a little bit. But
Sure.
we're trying to change that. But if it's accessible to you, please, engage in therapy. If it's not accessible to you, call NAMI. We'll connect you to some services that are reduced cost or free. We provide free support and everything. It's not a replacement for therapy, but it is better than nothing. And, so just take care of yourself in whatever way you're able to, whatever is manageable, and just know that you deserve it. You may need that reminder. You deserve it. You deserve the care and support that you give to other people. So, you want me to talk about my experience a little bit?
I very much so. Yeah, I do. And really the reason why is because, well, for multiple reasons, but because it is so important and it is so impactful, but also because I think that everybody who gets into the mental health field, whether it's on the clinical side or on the advocacy side, there is something in their lives that propels them to that. You know, you don't become the executive director of a local NAMI chapter because you have no personal experience with mental health challenges, right? So
and you don't do it to get
that
wealthy.
drive. Go ahead. What's that?
You don't do it to become wealthy.
Goddamn right. So, why? What led you to this point? I want to kind of trace that route and know a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had several crisis points. I'm one of those people that everyone wondered if I had a rock bottom, because I just kept going and going and going. But to know me now, I am such a different person than I was, 12 years ago when my dad died, and I found recovery, not really by choice, but by necessity. And so, if you look at me, you probably, and a lot of people ask, like, Nick, are you sure that you have mental illness? And are you sure that you have schizoaffective disorder? There's no look to it. There's no look to it. And there was no look to it when I was young either. So I grew up in a household that, my mom was amazing. My grandparents were amazing. I had a great upbringing, typical as I guess it could get. Everyone has problems. But we just didn't talk about them. We didn't talk about mental health. We didn't talk about the fact that my uncle had schizophrenia and lived with the disease of addiction all of his life. And that, at holiday time, when, we would all be sitting around the dining room table and, making merry and everything like that. And my uncle would come in blasted out of his mind, and my grandfather would have to put him in the shower with all of his clothes on. We used to make fun of him and call him a junkie. And, it wasn't until I was, I guess, college age that he lived with schizophrenia and he medicated it. And I wish I could, if there's anything I could go back and change with the knowledge that I have now, I do think that we could have helped him had we had the education. But I would also go back and give my parents some education too, because, dealing with me was not easy. I started to experience challenges. The first time I thought about suicide was in second grade. I say that in my speeches and everybody gasps. And, hey, listen, school is difficult. Dealing with other young people is difficult. I was a smart kid, but I was not a socially savvy kid. And so I got bullied mercilessly from kindergarten all the way through. And dealing with that as a kid, my thoughts weren't, I want to kill myself. I want to die by suicide. It was, I don't belong here. I don't fit in. And with a little 5, 6, 7 year, 8-year-old brain, you don't have the capacity to navigate that. And so, that becomes a fact. I don't belong here. My life is a mistake. And, this must be some kind of joke. Like it's a cosmic joke. So I dealt with that in interesting ways. I was placed in the gifted program after an evaluation. No one said anything about, Nick, there might be a diagnosis here. I was put in the gifted program. Everyone was happy with that. No one talked about mental health. And so, I navigated that by my little kid brain, I would come home from school after getting bullied and my mom would feed me. Like, it'll be all right, Nikki, here, and I learned that, and it didn't occur to me at the time, but food can be used as a drug. And so I used food to cope. And, we didn't talk about any kind of mental health or mental illness or mental health conditions. So eating disorders were not talked about either. So, we watched, when I was younger with my mom, a documentary and a movie about Karen Carpenter, who is an individual who was in a band called the Carpenters in the 70s and stuff. And my mom loved the Carpenters, loved Karen Carpenter. Beautiful voice, talented, family. But, we watched this movie about Karen Carpenter having an eating disorder. And all I remember the discussion being was, oh my God, how do you get like that? Oh my God, how come nobody ever did anything or stopped it? Or, that was the discussion and it ended there. And I do remember there being a little talk about how, men don't have eating disorders. It's just women. And so all of these, really damaging things, but like, that's just, it's what's handed down from generation to generation. And, that's how people would talk about these things. And so when I got to middle school and I was sick of the bullying and everything, and I decided, going into high school, I have to control this narrative. So eating disorders are a lot about control and, and trying to control a situation when you don't have any control. And that's the one thing that you do have control over. So I tried to take, further control by not eating at all. And, I would not eat until I was about to pass out, and I lost a bunch of weight. The goal of this was to have people like me. And I thought, I was a heavy set kid. And so I thought if I could just change the way that I look, people will like me. And, the sad part is that's what happened. People were, positive reinforcement. Nick, you look great. Oh my gosh. No one cares that I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and exercised before school and only ate like fat-free foods and, cereal and, and only when I was about to pass out. Everyone just was concerned about, wow, Nick, you look great. And so I thought, excellent. I'm going to keep going.
Can I ask a question about this? So you said the goal or the primary goal was to get people to like you.
Mm-hmm.
Was a secondary gain or part of this also trying to get you to like you?
Probably. I'm still trying to do that, Gabe. I'm still trying to...
Well, I ditto. But yeah, I mean,
but
because I feel like, so much of that is external. And of course, when you're bullied, you feel like shit and you feel like nobody likes you and you're a walking target. And I mean, literally from like kindergarten through college, through professional life, I've experienced that. And it's external and it is also internal. The bullying is incessant up here. Yeah. And so I'm wondering if somewhere you convince yourself, if I can get to X pounds or you get some kind of external validation that will also help me.
Absolutely.
With how I view myself.
I still struggle with that today. Yeah. I was not going to like me until other people liked me. And that was my measure of, whether I was worth it or not, was if other people don't like me, I can't like me and I'm not happy or satisfied. And so, that unfortunately, it's kind of the society that we live in and that I grew up in, that appearances matter and that is kind of the be all end all. And it's, like, how do you reconcile that when you're a little kid? It's, and especially without, parents who knew how to help a kid with mental health. They had no clue. So how do you navigate that? You just don't. and you do the best you can with your little kid brain. And so there we were. And, the being liked by other people and being accepted by other people was literally, I mean, that was more important than grades in college. That was more important than, my relationships with my family. That was more important than anything. And it was just something that I didn't have and wanted and needed desperately. So, yeah, the eating disorder was kind of, it was about getting other people to like me. But like at the end of the day, I wouldn't like myself if other people didn't anyway. So you're right. Yeah. And it's, just like mental health recovery is lifelong, the journey to self-love and self-like is going to be lifelong for me. I still have, I don't know, if you're listening and you're like, man, maybe he has a touch of borderline personality disorder. Well, maybe I do. But
what made you say that? I'm so curious about that.
Sometimes I wonder about that. My attachments and everything like that, no matter how successful I am or, all the good things that I do, I still walk into a room and think, you know what? Everyone here is going to hate me. So I'm going to need to bump it up a notch and be bright, happy Nick and, say yes to everything and to everyone. And, I think then when I leave the room, I go home and I think, well, they were nice to me, but now that I'm gone, everyone's like, oh my God, that guy was so weird. And, it's, and I analyze everything that I say and do. And, I always feel like I'm too much. And, I'm afraid of failure and abandonment. And, you can't diagnose everything. And you probably shouldn't try to diagnose everything. I mean, because what's left of being a person if everything is a diagnosis?
So this is crazy because it feels like you're giving voice to my internal monologue every moment of my life. And I knew we have a lot in common, but I don't think I knew that we had this much in common. It's a lot. And I have gone to my therapist and I have tried to convince him that I'm bipolar. I have tried to convince him that I'm a sociopath. I've tried to convince him that I have borderline personality disorder. That all I do 24 hours a day is manipulate people and that I'm manipulating him and on and on and on. So, but before you say something, as you know, and as a lot of the listeners know, I used to work in a locked inpatient psychiatric hospital. And something that you said made me immediately return back to work, even though I haven't been there in, I can't do math, it's 11 years. You said you can't diagnose everything. And I found that so funny because when I was working at the hospital, that's all we did is we pathologized everything a patient did. If they were chatty in group, patient is hyperverbal and trying to say all the right things to get discharged. If they're not going to group, patient isolating. They're going to all their groups, manipulating. It was you could not get it right as a patient in that environment because we were looking at everything through this fucked up lens. Where we were scrutinizing everything someone said and ascribing either malintent to it or pathologizing it. And what I realized when I left, I was like, wow, holy shit, I do that to myself.
I do too.
All the time. Everything I say or do, I pathologize it. And it's exhausting.
It is.
And crazy. And really sad because like you said, what is left of just being a fucking person?
Yeah. Like what is left? And, I struggle with that. I think on my way up to becoming executive director, I think I put that, I assign that internal monologue that I have, I assign that to other people before I even talk to them. I think they're gonna think I'm paranoid. They're going to think, he has schizoaffective disorder. We better watch him. Should he be doing this? Should he be doing that? And that is, that's draining. You asked me about telling my story. If that's draining,
Right.
I live a full life in my head that may not really be based in reality. And before I start my day, I start at a different place, and maybe you feel this way too. I start at a different place than other people, who maybe don't struggle with this stuff. And it takes more energy to get my day started than it would for someone who does not live with this. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people don't understand, is that I am painfully aware. There are a lot of people who are not aware of, their mental health status and everything like that. And that's a struggle. But I'm on the other end. I'm painfully aware of what's going on with me. I'm painfully self-aware. And so, I think it's almost more of a struggle to deal with that internal monologue and self-diagnosis than it is to deal with the actual diagnosis that I have. It's interesting. We could go on a rabbit or on a hamster wheel with that.
Yeah, I know. But it's abuse. I mean, I think
It is.
when you really boil it down and distill it to its simplest element,
Yeah.
it is self-abuse.
Yep.
And you and I have had childhoods where we've been abused by others.
Yes.
And it continues inside. And I guess that's really the ongoing work.
Yeah.
And the eternal work, probably, of like unraveling all of that and discovering either tolerance or acceptance or liking or loving.
Yeah.
That's like the apex of who we are. And that's a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is going to be life is a lifelong journey. So and this is all life. And so, I'm on the ride. It's a roller coaster. So if you're listening to this and you're someone who constantly wonders if they're, I don't love to use it, crazy. Am I crazy?
Or a piece of shit yeah.
Yeah. I have days where I'm like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone's going to find me out. And,
if only they knew.
If only they knew.
It really was.
And then I have days the other day when we were at the school and, this morning where people are saying, oh my gosh, thank goodness for you and what you do. Thanks for being so honest and forthcoming. Thank you for really caring genuinely. And we could see that. And I get emotional all the time when I'm doing this work. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that at all. But then I have days like that and I'm like, oh my gosh, Nick, how could you possibly ever feel that, you're a terrible person or you're bad at your job or you're less of a human than other people? I do feel that way, though, sometimes. And it's a roller coaster. So if you're on that roller coaster, too, you are really not alone. And, I wish sometimes, being an intelligent person, which we all are, people living with mental health conditions are some of the smartest people I've ever met. But I wish I could turn that down a little bit. I wish I could turn my self-awareness down a little bit, just, so that I can have some peace and not think so much about everything. But, that's where mental illness and mental health conditions live, is in your brain. And so here we are. But listen, you're not crazy and you're not I typically don't curse, but you're not a piece of shit. If I do curse outside of work, but,
I know. But that's okay. This is a safe space. for swear words and suicide, which is not a swear word. But
No.
yeah, I encourage guests to follow my lead as far
I
as
love it.
language goes. I
Yes.
did get my PP slapped during a talkback once, a mental health talkback by an organization which I won't name.
Oh,
Afterwards, and they were like, there are children here, and you were saying, shit and fuck on the panel, and I said, yeah, I was, and we were talking about mental illness and suicide, and if they can't handle that,
mhm.
then and you're talking to me about handling saying fucking shit, like I don't know what you think is going on here, you know what I mean? So anyway,
Yeah.
that's all that to say is
It's important to be
I.
real
I,
too.
it is, and that's something that I love about you so much. It's your candor, it's your integrity, it's
Yeah.
being who you are, and laying it all out there. And
But though, Gabe, if
you
I'm
go
not,
ahead.
it kills me. It would kill me. If I had to hold all of this in, I'm a whole lot of
Yeah,
person. And so are you. And I love that about you. But when you hold it in like that, it can be deadly.
yeah,
You
it
know?
can, and it is. I think when for me, I know when I am able to talk and I'm able to share, and whether it's with Kay or whether it's with you or at an event or doing any writing, it releases a pressure valve, and the
Mm-hmm.
pressure builds up
Mm-hmm.
even after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you constantly need that kind of release, and I think that's part of the reason people use.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's part. So there's maladaptive coping methods that people use.
Yeah.
There are healthier coping methods that people use. There are methods that are kind of maybe in between.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you do need some way to deal with what accumulates in
Yeah.
your mind and in your body. It's very, very hard.
Have to. Yeah. And the therapy that I'm doing later today is somatic therapy. And it's I hey, listen, I'll try anything.
Hmm.
It's I it builds up in your shoulders. Your face gets red, and like I take blood pressure medication now. And I'm 43. It's that time.
Hmm.
But it literally builds up, literally, and you can feel it, and it comes out as your capacity is diminished. You have less patience for people and things, and you blow up on people. And I mean, it fuels my anxiety. So yeah, let it out, release that valve. So
And swearing is a healthy way to do that, by the
it
way.
listen.
Um,
The F word. I'm. Everyone's heard me say it. I don't know why I'm shy right now, but the
I
F
kind of
word.
love it.
It.
I think
I.
it's really cute.
Uh, the F word. It's just it. And everyone who's listening is probably laughing at me. It's the F word is just a great. If you really enunciate and let it all out, it's such a good release valve.
It is. The F word is a good egg. Um,
Yeah.
so I I want to ask you.
Yeah.
So, do you identify with the term mental health advocate? Did you say I'm
Yeah.
Nick Emeigh? I'm a mental health advocate.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean? Just for people who like, I think it means different things to different people, and different mental health advocates might have a different definition of it. But what does it mean to you?
Well, I think it means giving voice to people who actually live with mental health conditions. So, what you're doing. It means talking to legislators and fighting for, accessible and affordable care and things like that, because legislators you might think that because they're elected officials that they know about all this stuff, and because they're on a mental health caucus or whatever, that they must know because they're there. And why would they be there if they don't know? I can tell you with certainty from doing this for years, they do not know. And we need to tell them. And to me, being a mental health advocate means that, nothing is done for us and, with us, without us. And, you cannot have a mental health system that is just guided by people who have gone to school for, psychiatry, psychology, counseling. And
most of them don't know shit, by the way.
I mean, we have some really good ones, but a lot of them, I think that they start out with the best intentions, and then this rift forms where we know better. Poor Nick with the mental illness will pat me on the head, and we don't need to listen to that because they're ill. Listen to us. We are literally telling you, if this were a for-profit business or a grocery store, say, and you had customers that were screaming that, this is ineffective, your customer service is terrible, it's unaffordable, we can't afford this stuff anymore. The powers that be at that for-profit corporation would work real quickly to change things.
Yeah.
It's just not that same way in a, government system or a nonprofit system or, the mental health system as a whole. It's kind of, it's for a long time, it's been, you sit there and listen to me because I have the degree and I will give you pills and then you will be okay. And then once you're stable, then maybe we can talk. But, what I've seen we're kind of going, I'll tell you the rest of my story in a bit, but, if you are a power that be, one of the powers that be in the mental health system, and you don't give any thought to what an individual like you and I, Gabe, have had to go through in our recovery journeys, then you probably shouldn't be doing this work. I hate to say it, but actually I don't hate to say it. You shouldn't be doing this work. And, I think everybody knows who knows me and NAMI that's how I feel. Everybody, every boardroom, every government session, whatever you call them, a caucus, whatever, anytime that you are passing legislation, anytime that you are providing funding for programs and services, you should have someone living with a mental health condition and a family member who has had to go through this as well at the table providing feedback. And I mean, at least one. And also, with that said, don't tokenize us and expect that we'll do this free of charge.
It was just coming out of my mouth, so thank you for addressing that.
If someone is in any kind of leadership and listening to this, they may say, Nick, well, then what are we supposed to do? Pay us for our time.
That's right.
Actually respect us. Don't pat us on the head and talk to us in a voice like this and expect us to, give you what you need. Our lived experience is valuable. It is, if you want us to put it into action and service, it's worth something. So treat it that way, Yeah. So, and everything I just said is advocacy as well. So speaking about things like that, and, there are, mental illness and mental health and, neurodivergence and everything like that is on a spectrum. So, there are lots of people who may be nonverbal or may be, so sick with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or depression that they can't go and have a seat at the table. For a caucus or for a legislative session or, for whatever. And what an honor it is for me to be able to be a voice for those people as well. They're my peers. And, they are also really smart, capable individuals. It's just that, maybe I'll get sick again and won't be able to do it. You never know. But what an honor it is to be able to be a voice for them as well. I hate to say like us, them, but for the
I know what you
context
mean.
of this, I think you know what I mean. I'm not trying to say like,
No, of course.
but
But while you're here and
mhm.
while you're stable and while you're healthy, that is such an important role, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the same as physical disability. Like I once was at a conference for accessible housing, and the person speaking used this term tabs.
Hmm.
You guys are tabs, and we were asking what that meant. She said temporarily able-bodied. That at some point in your life, like you're walking around now, you're doing everything, you have two legs that work and two arms that work. At some point, you're going to need some modification to your living space because of some kind of physical deterioration, right? So you're temporarily able-bodied right now, and it's
Hmm.
the same thing with our minds, especially if we have a mental health challenge. That's
Yeah.
going to wax and wane. That's going to go up and down, right? And recovery is not linear. There are times when we are in remission, and there are times when we have setbacks, and all of that, and
Absolutely.
that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
But you were talking about what different parts of advocacy is, and part of it is telling your story.
Oh
So
yeah,
let's
absolutely.
return to that for a bit. Did you
Sure.
like that segue?
You're great,
Was that
Gabe.
good?
Yeah,
Oh
you're good at
boy.
this. So I think I left off with, the eating disorder thing, and that's how I started to control the narrative. The problem with everything that happened is that, it became a fact in my brain that, you can get what you want by sacrificing yourself and, not being healthy and things like that. And so, I wanted to be a famous author and everything. So I went away to school in Boston, and, I thought, oh, I'm the best. I'm going to get everybody to read again and love to read and everything. And so I got a degree in literature, and, and I don't do anything with that now, but, I should
I
maybe
have a
one day.
Master of Education degree, so don't worry
Uh,
about it. I don't do shit with that either. So whatever.
So, I it was at school though in Boston that I really started to get sick. And, I expressed to my family at that time, that was the first time I said out loud that I was thinking about, killing myself, and that I thought that I should do that. And so my family was terrified, and they took me to the family doctor, and the family doctor put me on Paxil and Xanax. And no one, though, I mean, I'm sure you can tell I'm not stupid. I'm not the smartest guy ever, but I'm not dumb. And I got these 2 prescription bottles, and I did not know how to take this medication. So I thought, when you finish the bottle, you're done. And so it is what it is. But the Xanax felt nice. And so I wanted to continue with that. And I went back to Boston and everything, and so I didn't have access to that particular thing. And every party that I went to, every time I hung out with somebody, you could just tell, like, I am awkward, I'm weird, like, like I'm socially awkward. Like it's hard for me to be present in social situations because I'm just thinking like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, amongst other things. So, it was recommended to me that I drink and, take other pills and experiment with other substances. And I did. And I developed an addiction that lasted up until 12 years ago now. So it lasted until about 12 years ago. And I tried to be functional. And it really is difficult when you've got mental illness and addiction. I wasn't fully diagnosed yet on the mental health side, so I didn't know what I was working with. But all I knew is that drugs and alcohol really were helpful in, reducing symptoms. But the problem was that I needed it constantly, and it was expensive, and it started to ruin my life, and I faced consequences for those choices that I was making. And at one point, it wasn't a choice at all. I had to do it, or else I was sick. So when I got a really good job, and I was running a business and everything, and the business happened to be in pharmaceuticals, and I was just not happy. I made a lot of money, but I was not happy. And so, I was going through the motions, doing pills and opiates and everything. And then one day I did not feel good. And I felt like my brain was separating from reality, and it would come back, and it would separate, and it would come back. Hearing voices, which, hearing voices, it's not always, this outside voice that's totally unknown. Mine sounded a whole lot like me. And it was really scary. And I went home I grew up in Levittown, Pennsylvania. I went home, and, my mom made me food and put me to bed. And I woke up in the morning, and my mom made a terrible noise, and I went out, and she was unconscious. And we learned that she had a brain aneurysm. And so I was nowhere near sober. So, yes, terrible. I was not sober though. So, they did surgeries on her and everything. And then, they didn't work. And so my mom ended up passing away. She died, in January. It was 2008 or 9. And I can't believe it's been that long, by the way. That's wild. I did not think that I would be able to live without my mom. And, oh, man. So everybody thinks that that's like the end of my story, though. Okay, Nick's mom died. He cleaned it up. He got better. It got worse instead, because I didn't want to live well to make my mom proud. I wanted to die and be with my mom and be out of this, thing we call life. So I made it to her birthday that year, which would have been September 30th. And I decided that was all I could handle. So, working for a pharmacy chain, I went into the pharmacy, and I took what I thought I needed to end my life. And I said goodbye to everybody. I went home, and I don't want to get into it all necessarily, but I did what I thought I needed to do, and it didn't work. And, you hear a lot of people say, like, as soon as I started the process, I regretted it. I can't say that that's necessarily true for me. I woke up, and I think it's important that you get all perspectives around
Absolutely.
suicide. I think a lot of people feed narratives because they sound good, but I'm not going to do that today. I was not really regretful. I was angry when I woke up that I was not successful. And, today I feel differently, obviously, but back then I was upset. And so I got called into work because there was an emergency. It turns out I was the emergency. And I ended up asking for help. And they said, Nick, we know what you did. If you tell us what happened, we won't have you arrested. And I begged for help. I cried. I said my mom died. I don't know what I tried to kill myself. And that really didn't matter. Everyone came in and told me how disappointed in me they were. And then 2 police officers came in and handcuffed me and took me out. And on the way told everybody that, in the store, that this is not how you want your life to end up. And when I was sitting in the back of the police car, the officer turned around And he said, Nick, didn't your mom just die? And I said, yes, she did. And I thought maybe I was going to get some kind of compassion or something. And he said, oh, do you think she'd be proud of you?
Wow.
And that was really rough. And that fuels a lot of the advocacy that I do today around incarceration of people with mental illness. One of the sayings at NAMI, and I really do like it, you might think it's trite or whatever now because we say it a lot, but people with mental health conditions deserve help, not handcuffs. It's the truth, though, And I got handcuffs and I went to jail. And if you know me now, jail is not for me. I was not made for jail. But when I was in there, if I could have found anything to kill myself with, I would have. I didn't though. And I went to I went to drug and alcohol treatment. So, things may be a little better today, but 11, 12 years ago, if substances are involved, you go to rehab. So I went to this rehab for professionals, and I was in these groups of people who were, doctors and nurses who talked about taking needles out of their patients and putting them in their own arms to get high. And I thought, you know what? It was never about getting high for me. I wanted to literally die. So and I wanted my brain to calm down. Like my brain is on fire all the time. Like I needed something to, extinguish that. And, no one was talking about that. And everyone was talking about how do I get my license back? How do I go back to work? So that was just another place that I didn't fit in. So when I got out of rehab, I went home and my family was still so disappointed in me. I thought I ruined my life. And so I tried to end my life again. And that time I overdosed and I went to the hospital and I was put in for quite a while. It was through Hurricane Sandy, the second hospitalization. So if you put it, I don't know, I forget what year, 2012 maybe?
I think so.
Yeah. So it went on for a long time. But I got out of the hospital. I was prescribed like 14 different medications. My family didn't want me at home, so I went to a recovery house. And so and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at first. And which is common. Lots of people get misdiagnosed, and fortunately a lot of those medications are interchangeable. And so there were no medications that did me, any grave harm or anything like that. So it was just, it's annoying to have to take 14 medications. I think sometimes it's overdone. Sometimes there's a reason for it, but sometimes it can be overdone. And that was, I think, one of those times. And so for someone who couldn't manage to literally want to stay alive and breathe, 14 meds a day is a lot. So the first thing I did was on my own, cut down my meds. I stopped going to therapy and I got another job because I was like, listen, this mental illness stuff is for the birds. I don't want it, and I'm not going to participate in it. I'm just going to go back to being a normal person, and I want to walk down the street and everyone think, oh, that looks like a nice young guy. Everything's hunky-dory. And if you've ever seen The Real Housewives, by the way, Kathy Hilton, someone was relating a story and they said, oh, it's all hunky-dory. And Kathy Hilton goes, who's hunky-dory? Like it's a person. Go watch it. It's fun. If you need a laugh today, go watch it. But I just wanted to be normal. And there's no such thing as being normal. Yeah. And I was chasing this thing and it wasn't working. And I'm like, what is wrong with me that I can't be normal? Well, no one is. So, but as you can imagine, that was a cycle that I went through for a while. Stop your meds, stop therapy, be normal, get sick again. Because mental illness just doesn't go away because you want it to. Mental health conditions, and I prefer mental health conditions, that term, but mental health conditions don't go away of your own volition or your willpower or, because you can just control it. if we could all control it and had enough willpower and just wanted it badly enough and it went away, then I wouldn't have a job. You wouldn't be here. Like none of us would be talking about this. So that's kind of what kept on happening until my dad passed away. And when my dad died, he had a heart attack in his sleep. I just thought, wow, life is really unfair. Like I'm going to curse again. I got the shit end of the shittiest stick in Shitville. Like it just, and if you don't put humor in things, like this stuff can be too heavy. So
you know it.
If you hear me chuckle and everything like that, I'm the one who lived through this particular story. And, I don't want you to be sad for me or anything. And I do think that humor is very healthy and it helps me to cope. And I have a lot of dark humor. So my dad died. And the first thing I did was try to kill myself again. And my sister got in my face and she said exactly what you should. You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? You're not thinking of hurting yourself, are you? Because, maybe that would have been what happened, but I didn't consider it hurting myself. I consider it lifting a burden from my family. I consider it eliminating the pain I lived with. So she did that. She got in my face. She said, are you trying to kill yourself? And I said, yeah, I don't know how to live life. I don't know how to be an adult. I don't know how to be like a productive member of society. I don't know how to be a person. So no, like I'm going to ruin this family if I don't do this. So, she made me sleep on the couch. And then the next day I went to the hospital for the last time. And that's when I got sober. And I've been sober ever since. And I started volunteering at NAMI. At first I said no, because what they wanted me to do as a volunteer at NAMI was to go into the schools and tell my story of recovery so that kids didn't have to go through what I went through. And while that sounds really nice, you got to remember, I'm an adult, but I just feel like a big kid who got bullied all my life, And so I didn't want to get up on a stage in front of people and tell them my most painful moments and the things I was most ashamed of and then get bullied again. But then I was living in a recovery house at the time. I lived in that recovery house for about 2 years. And when I started working here at NAMI, and we had 2 suicides in the house. One guy had schizophrenia and he couldn't get his mental health medication. But you know what's easier to get? Heroin. So he overdosed in the bathroom. And then we had another young man who died by suicide as well. And, he after that, I said, you know what, Nick, you got to get over whatever is, you got to get over and you have to go and tell your story. And so that's what I did. I was terrified, but NAMI provided the training that I needed to, put my story together in a way that would be helpful for kids. And I did that for years. And then I got promoted and I started doing other things at NAMI. And, it really... like, no one at NAMI ever said, like, Nick, you've got schizoaffective disorder. You can't have the passwords for these things. So I started doing the social media and the website and the newsletter. I started slow and I was on disability at the time. So I did the Ticket to Work program and the county, Bucks County, saw that I was valuable in this space and they provided the funding to pay me. And so I got off of disability and I eased myself into work and now you can't stop me. So it's when I first started, we helped, a couple thousand people a year. Last year, we helped just under 62,000 people in Bucks in the surrounding areas. And it's through all of our programs. Like I got sober in AA. Thank goodness. I love it. It's supposed to be anonymous, but I'm not anonymous, and it helped me. So if it helps you too, cool. It's not for everybody, just like NAMI's not for everybody. But it really helped me. And I thought, why don't we have mental health stuff that's like AA? And, NAMI had support groups. And I thought, well, we could do the same thing with those groups. And so I built up a network of support groups and everything. And we teach mental health education in every school in Bucks County. My youth programs director, Mia, does that. And then my support programs director now, Taryn, they work for me. She does all of the support groups and the warm line and everything. So, that stuff, I'm not saying it to be braggy or anything like that, but damn, if I died, would this stuff be happening? I don't know. Maybe it would. Yeah. NAMI's cool. People like it. But NAMI is what people make it in the community. Right. And so
things would be happening, but they wouldn't be happening like this, and they wouldn't be happening to this extent. And an organization is about the people who are involved and what they bring to it. And I want to say that I think that you and NAMI are very lucky to have each other.
Yes.
That it is not just one-sided.
No.
Because I think that
you
bring
me.
Something, they do. But you bring something so unique to them, whether it's you or whether it's NAMI-Man, who you can find all about via the film that we made about NAMI-Man, a mental health superhero. It is a kind of sparkly something that other people would not be able to do. And I don't know. I think you and NAMI Bucks go very, very well together. And I hope that it's a very long and mutually healthy relationship. And I love that you're executive director. I am going to be hounding you to get that changed in your bio on the website.
Oh, yeah. I have to
because people should know about it. And in listening to you hear your story, and we do need to wrap up, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
Most of our interviews are a lot shorter than this, but I could sit and talk to you for hours and hours and not have the slightest compunction about it. But I just want to say to you, like, as we wrap up, mental illness, and I said this at the screening in Doylestown, it tells you a lot of lies. And one of the things that mental illness tells me is that I don't deserve friends, and I don't deserve to be held in high regard. And I know a lot of the same stuff that you, and a lot of the same lies that your brain tells you.
Yep.
And I'm just very grateful for your friendship, and I'm grateful for how we look at each other. And it's very moving to me. And we've done a lot of things together, done a lot of events together, and shared a lot together. And it's very, very meaningful to me that you exist in the world, and in the world of advocacy, and in my life. So thank you.
Same, Gabe. Meeting you when I first started at NAMI was one of the best things that could have happened, because it was you first. You looked at me as though I was a complete human. You never talked down to me. You never spoke at me. You invited me into your world. And at the time, I was fresh, new in recovery. And so that meant the world to me. So, there are a few people who, you could call the reasons that I am who I am today and where I am. And you are one of them, Gabe. Really. I don't know that I would be an executive director of NAMI today without you. and the way that you treated me. And it's just as important as the way that you didn't treat me. You did not I'm always afraid that people are going to treat me as I expect them to, and as that narrative in my head dictates. And you didn't. And you were one of the first people to make me feel like I was, I can have mental illness and be a suicide attempt survivor and be a complete human worthy of the respect that you showed me. So I think we both said the same things kind of, but I wanted you to know that too. And I got to tell you, you doing a documentary about me being NAMI-Man and NAMI I'm so honored. And then I put it in my presentations also. I just saw the other day, it has over 18,000 views on YouTube. I was shocked. I was so shocked. How cool. You guys are so good at what you do. You're such an amazing executive director, editor. I shouldn't be surprised just because of that, but because I'm in it, I'm like, oh my God, 18,000 people saw that. Oh my God. And then we did a film screening.
I look at that and go, motherfucker, it should have 118 million views. So you know what I mean? It's so funny the way we look at that. I'm glad that you're happy. I am relentlessly unhappy. No matter how many times a film that we made is seen, I consider it an immense failing because I really feel like the films, and yours in particular, are so good, and people need to see and understand and be moved by you and your commitment and dedication and your warmth. So if you haven't seen it, please, it's on our YouTube channel. Just look up NAMI-Man Bucks County and you will find it. And just keep flying, Nick. Keep flying that green cape. And I'm very proud of you and I love you.
Oh, I love you more. I do. You are amazing, Gabe. And thanks for having me today. And to everybody listening, just remember what I said. You're not alone when you feel like you're crazy and on a roller coaster and going through this heck of a ride. You're not alone in that. And there are real people out there who can reinforce the fact that you deserve all that you give to other people. You're not less of a person because you live with mental health conditions or you're a survivor of suicide. And so anything that Gabe and I can do, you can do too. So
that's right. And anything that Nick and I deserve, you deserve too.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Till we meet again.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us in conversation today. It's beautiful to see the progression of our contributors. Thank you so much to mental health advocate and mental health superhero, Nick Emeigh. He is the executive director of NAMI Bucks County. He is a survivor of several suicide attempts, and he is a mental health advocate who is spreading hope and healing through Bucks County and very, very far beyond. And we are so proud of him and of our friendship with him. What an amazing guest. Thank you, Nick, for joining us on the show today. Before we leave you, we want to remind you to check out our website, recoverydiaries.org. There, like this podcast, you'll find additional stories, videos, and content about mental health, empowerment, and change. We look forward to continuing to grow our community. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to join our mailing list so you never miss a podcast episode, essay, or film. I'm Gabe Nathan. Until next time, take good care.